All right, so we're going to jump in and start talking about uh, creating renderings of your models, and also how to create good images of your models even without doing a rendering. So we're going to have an example that we're going to go through, and we're going to walk through the process of how to create a rendering. But first, we're going to look at some ways that we can make a good image without maybe going through that throughout the entire process of making a rendering, because sometimes we don't really need to go through the entire process. We're just trying to show someone maybe what the product will look like. We can go through the process of doing a whole rendering if we want it to look really, really nice, but we don't always need that. So we're not going to jump right into the microphone example. First, we're going to look at the valve assembly that we have made before. So we're still in the modeling application, and essentially what we want to do is we want to change the colors of our parts to look like how they would, and we want to just clean up our surface a little bit so that we can get a good image. And before we really start doing any of that, the first thing that I want to talk about is like how these circles look. This is NX's way of just putting in the object without having to do as much processing power. So a quick way to get these parts to look the way they are supposed to is so we can right click on the part itself and then go to show exact. That's going to give us the actual edges. We can go to every part and do that, but that can be time consuming. So you can just highlight all the parts, right click, and show exact. And that's going to show the exact for all of our components. Another thing that we can do is we can even get more precise with this. We can go to menu, preferences, visualization. And if we go to accuracy, we can show how the edges, the accuracy of the edges, whether they're processing fast or more accurately. We could bump that up if we wanted to, and we could also do our surface accuracy. Typically, this one doesn't make as big of a difference when we're just doing this type of visualization. So we turn the edge accuracy up a little bit and the surface accuracy up. And if we hit apply, not much has changed. Maybe some of these internal holes here are look a little bit more precise. So you can mess around with these if you want to. The other thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we don't have any sketches visible, any sort of assembly constraints, anything like that. We want to make sure that our image or our part is all that we see. And if you look down here, we have this work coordinate system displayed below. We want to get rid of this. So the way that we do that is we're going to go up to Tools, over here to More, and then we're going to unselect Display WCS, and that's going to get rid of that coordinate system right there. Well, I mean, it's still there, but we just can't see it. One way that we've gone over how to change the color and translucency of these objects is with our Edit Object Display. So this is a totally acceptable way to change the colors of our parts so that we can display them better. So Edit Object Display, select your object, and here we have control over the translucency and the color. So maybe this was, when we're thinking about what material it's going to be, maybe it's a black plastic. So we can just turn it to, we say that it's a black material, and we can just turn that to black. Maybe that's still going to be gray. Maybe everything is going to be the way that it is, but we're not going to use a translucent material here. And maybe this is going to be a gray material as well. If this is all that we need, we're just trying to kind of show what we're going for. This is totally acceptable. The one thing that we want to do, just like we did with our drawings, we're looking at the lining up our images and our parts. We want to make sure that if we have a vertical line, that it looks vertical. You know, we don't want it to be like this. We want it to be vertical. And we want to display it in a way that we actually see our components. And then we at least want to take a screenshot of our screen. We don't want to pull out our phone and take a picture of it with our phone. And in order to do that, what we want is we want to zoom in. We want to make our component as large as we can on the screen. So we don't want to try to take a picture like this. What that's going to produce is an image with low resolution, low quality. We're going to be taking a small image and we're going to try to enlarge it. That does not work. We want to start off with as large of an image as we can. And if we need to make it smaller, then that's fine. But we don't want to take a small image and enlarge it. So there's a couple ways to take a screenshot of this. One way is to use the snipping tool. We can be in rectangular snip mode. You could do window. So we're just going to go to new, and we're going to take a screenshot of this area right here. And again, we're going to get close to the image. We don't want to be all the way out here. We want to be close to around the image. And there we have a good screenshot that we can use. When we put this into a Word document or PowerPoint or whatever we are using, we want to make sure that we keep our aspect ratio the same. So if we need to resize this, we don't want to, or we do want to keep the aspect ratio. So if I would need to make this smaller or larger, I want to make sure that I'm grabbing onto the corner and changing the size of the length and width of it at the same time. It's keeping the same aspect ratio. What we don't want to do is change this in a way that we do not keep that aspect ratio. So I don't want to change one side and then try to change the other and lose that aspect ratio. So an image like this, pointless. But we can take this, enlarge it, and that is much better. So we want to make sure that we keep our aspect ratios with all of these images. Another way to take a screenshot or to capture the image of our part is we can go to File, Export, and we can go down to Image, and it's actually going to capture the image for us. So we can choose a region, we could choose the graphics area. We can actually come in here and change our background to transparent. So when we take a screenshot like that, the white background is still part of the image, but if we don't want that, we can go this path and we can actually make our background transparent. There's some other options too. We can enhance the edges, and we can choose the format that we want it saved as. So PNG, we can use a transparent background. We can choose where we want to save it to, and we can just hit OK. And here's that image that we just made. We can see that the background is transparent. So this might be a nice feature to add to maybe some PowerPoint slides for like senior project or something. Now the next thing that we can do, if we need to get the next step up in detail, is going to be changing our style. So If we go to view, style, and we're going to come down to true shading. Now, true shading changes a couple of things. First thing that does is change our projection. So we're used to seeing parallel projection, but if we go to the true shading, then perspective is going to turn on. This perspective view is a little bit more of a realistic view. We see the three-dimensional object as if we were to view it in the real world. So it's a little bit more realistic. The other thing that happens is that we do get access to some materials. It's not the full list of materials that we have when we do our rendering. We'll do that here in a little bit. But the material is a little bit different. Now, the colors that we selected are still shown. The other thing is that we now have a floor, and we can see a reflection. So we have a light source that's causing a reflection and also shadows as well. So we're able to show a little more detail. So if we want to make changes to our true shading environment, we can come here to True Shading Editor. And here's where we have access to a whole bunch of options. First we can see up here is the materials. We'll go over that in a second. We're going to come down to background. So we can change the color of our background. We can go to a dark. We can even go to an image. And we could put in our custom image if we wanted to. We can change the floor. We could select a plane and have that plane be the floor. We can choose we can choose where we want that plane to be at. We can offset the plane or the floor. We can also turn off the grid here. And we can turn on and off the shadow and the floor reflection. So maybe we don't want the floor reflection on. And we can change the lighting. So we can move where the light is at that's shining on the part. So we want to highlight this corner a little bit more. We can also turn down or up that light. And also, we have some materials that are available to us. So this isn't the full list of materials like we'll see when we do the renderings, but this is a little bit closer to the real world look than just changing the color. So when we do the materials, it's going to change the color, but also the texture a bit. So we said earlier that this knob was, we turned it black because we said maybe we'd use a black plastic. On here we have a black rubber, so we can use that. So I'm just going to click on the knob, but if I come down here, you can see that this section isn't highlighted. So we've got to be careful about what we are selecting to change the material. So the True Shading Editor wants to select faces. So what we want to do is make sure that we are either selecting the faces or selecting the solid body. So now we have the entire thing selected, and we can come over and say, I want that to be the black rubber. And I don't know if you can tell, but it changed it to color the color black, but also, it was black before, but now it's a little bit like of a matte black. It's not as shiny as it was. And we can go around and assign materials to all these components. So maybe this lever is aluminum. And maybe the fulcrum for some reason is brass. And we'll change the block as well. Let's say the block is clear plastic. It's kind of how it was before. It was translucent a little bit. And now we've turned that material into a clear plastic, so we can actually see into it. And we also have this option here for the reflections, so we can change kind of how the light is reflecting off of this material. So we can maybe turn it to glossy, brushed metal if we wanted to, or we could keep it none. So we could use the same way to take these pictures here. Now, the other way to get a good rendering of your model is we are going to go to render. And this is where we are going to move over to our mic example, and we'll get into how to perform that rendering, or how to get a good rendering.